The album's called The Thieves Banquet.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a subplot why you named it as that, but I feel sometimes it's very poignant for what's going on today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it seems there's a lot of things that's being taken from the people and put into other, entities. Do you feel that it reflects and marks time of what's actually happening today, The Thieves Banquet?
Yeah, I think that's precisely why I chose the title. That it does very much feel like we live in a kind of Orwellian world where the greatest thieves and murderers and robbers get to pose as if they're forces for democracy and forces for good. And if you steal someone's telephone, you'll go to prison. If they steal a whole country's minerals to make 1 million telephones, and obviously I'm a hypocrite in this, I have a telephone, I know what went into paying for that telephone. And so it's a little bit about that, about our own hypocrisy as people, what we choose to ignore just so we can stay sane and so we can function on a daily basis. But I mean, we live in a world that, we have technology, we can fly all over the world. Certainly born in a country like this, we have a certain amount of privileges, though you don't really realise you're privileged till you get a bit older. If you're from the kind of background we're from, in this country you're at the bottom of the society, and then you start travelling if you're lucky enough to travel and you realise, hold on a minute, compared to a lot of the rest of the people in the world, actually my life was quite blessed. But we live in a world run by, it's not run by altruism or kindness. We live in a world run by greed, and the greedier you are, the more you can amass, the more you're praised as a kind of great person. Whatever you do to get that wealth, slavery, genocide, war, arms sales, doesn't matter. As long as you've got it, then you're A-okay.
But then I thought that also you're like one of the, you're one of the few who actually are known for actually wanting to highlight social issues, create social change, enlighten people. How isolating is it at times when you are, quote unquote, on your own this movement?
I wouldn't say I feel isolated. And I also wouldn't say I'm the only one that highlights social issues, in the sense that, there's others that talk about similar subjects to me. But as I always say to people, a rapper rapping about French champagne, Italian clothes and German cars is a social issue. What they're saying is, I submit to capitalism, I submit to European supremacy. I'm not going to rap about anything from Africa or Asia. I'm not rapping about green tea. Now, green tea in China occupies the space that champagne occupies in France. So they're adopting a particular culture. I have enough, I suppose, I've been lucky enough to have enough self-confidence that I don't really feel isolated. I just feel I'm being who I am. And in many ways that feels quite liberating, to be lucky enough to actually have a career, basically being my honest self, because I know a lot of people are not being their honest selves. They know better, but they do whatever they think they got to do to get ahead.
So what was the actual light bulb moment when you actually, because I know before you said when you were younger you were a bit more rowdy, with the man. What actually made you think, snap out? Because I think a lot of people are developing, but they haven't reached that tipping point.
Well, a combination of things. Firstly, I had a certain foundation. Going to Pan-African Saturday School, being exposed to proper forms of music, education early, that when the time came and I made certain mistakes and I got in trouble and whatever else, and I had to make a decision about what I was going to do with my life after I left football and all of that, I had already, I think, the ground basis to move in the right direction. But I also acknowledge that I was very lucky.
Now with the album, it's a business still. Do you still put any expectations on targets, what you want to get in terms of numbers or how you want it to proceed? How do you...
We obviously have a spreadsheet and we look at our expenditure. You have to do this if you're going to run a business. We look at our expenditure and we look at how many albums we need to sell to break even at least, and hopefully make a profit, because obviously you can still tour and there's other merchandise and other ways of making a profit. But obviously we always, just the basic nature of the game, have to only try and spend the amount of money promoting a record that we think we can actually make back, and that's just part of what it is. So hopefully we achieve that. If we go beyond that, that's wonderful. But I know how the industry works, so I don't have any unrealistic expectations. I know if you don't get on the radio, if you don't have a certain amount of TV exposure, there's a threshold you're just not really going to go beyond realistically, and that's fine.
So with your business model, you factor that in, that we're not going to have radio, we're not going to have TV?
I don't factor in that we're not going to have it. We plan on the assumption that we're not. but we still make inroads to try and attempt to have that. Because obviously if I can expose what I'm doing to a larger audience, then I'd love to. I'm not willing to change what I'm doing and alter what I'm doing to suit and make music I don't like, basically, to try and get ahead.
How do you decide what goes on the album? You know, because this one, like, you thought about it differently, you had a live band. You know, how do you become discerning? Because there must be some tracks that could have made it.
Yeah.
And how do you think, nah, because you're your own boss in a way. How do you decide what goes on, what doesn't?
You just know. You just feel in your soul. With this album, it was quite easy. There was only about 4 songs, extra songs that we made that didn't make the album. And they were all a bit crap. They just weren't quite right. Like they just.
I've never heard someone actually say that about the music. That's.
No, I've released some crap songs before. I'll tell you that straight. Like I've released some songs and I listen back. I'm like, that song was shit. Why did you release that? I released like a bonus track on my last album called "Doing Nothing." Bruv, this song's shit, bruv. I have no qualms to say it. It's crap. But at the time, I thought it was alright. It was me experimenting, doing something that I thought was a bit funny and a bit different for me. And I look back and I was like, nah, that was garbage. That happens. But with this record, I feel very sure that I'll like all of the songs a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. I feel like this is the most complete set of songs, and there isn't any attempt to sort of be funny, even though there is one very funny song. When you hear what it's about, I feel like this is the most complete and kind of adult collection of songs I've put together, and it was really quite easy to decide what songs weren't making it. There were 2 songs that really potentially could have been quite good that didn't make the record, but the music wasn't right or the beat wasn't right, and we'll probably revisit them. That's the thing with live band stuff, trying to fit it. I remember reading a Radiohead interview and they were talking about that song Nude. They were sitting on that song for about 10 years until they finally recorded it in a way that they thought was right to release it. They played it live loads, but it wasn't quite right, and then they finally got it right, and it's one of my favourite Radiohead songs.
We were in the last interview, we were talking about rock, you know, the origins of genres and how things are being co-opted, and you know, a lot of people, if they hear Akala on a different type of beat, they'll say, why are they trying to make a certain type of music, not knowing the actual origins of the genres that we created. How do you address that? Because you know, you are someone people look up to, and people may not originally know that this is our music. How do we get that message across to people? What is ours and what isn't?
It's difficult because obviously we have a media that is very much into making it seem as if black people had nothing to do with nothing, let alone rock music and other things. And the thing is, we wouldn't even need to emphasize it if people were just honest. Chinese people don't need to emphasize the martial arts that come from China because everyone just admits it. Indian people don't need to emphasize that Ashtanga or Jivamukti or all these other forms of yoga come from India because people that practice yoga don't feel the need to pretend that these things are not Indian just because they love them. For some reason there's this insidious kind of racist perversion that people have with African music and the music of the African diaspora, where they feel this need to be like, oh, it's everybody's music, it's not. Well, even when it comes out of a segregated environment where black people have been forced to live only because they're black, people still feel this need to kind of co-opt and steal and not give credit, or even like what you had with Eric Clapton, where he made an entire career off of basically copying African American music and then turned around and said he didn't want any niggas coming to his country. You know, this kind of behavior, and there's a lot of people that think and feel that way. They love black people's stuff, but they don't like black people. And I don't really give a shit to pander to that kind of stuff. I just tell people what it is. So I think it's important that young African Caribbean people be educated, because the same thing that was going on with rock 50 years ago, you can see happening with hip hop right now. You can see happening with soul right now. It's totally conceivable that in 20 or 30 years time, people will think hip hop had nothing to do with black people. That people will think soul had nothing to do with black people. And like I said, it wouldn't even be a problem. It wouldn't even be something we needed to go on about if there wasn't something that I know for a fact, a structure in place where people are like, yeah, you're good, you know, Amaru, but you're a bit dark. We need someone a bit lighter than you, preferably somebody white, to do exactly what you do. And this is not me being horrible or paranoid. This is the foundations of the music industry came from, you know, there was a time when, you know, jazz DJs, they used to find a white jazz DJ and teach him to talk black. And you look at some of the radio DJs, you know, in this country, and you think, well, has it really changed that much when you've got people from posh countryside backgrounds talking like a black caricature that I've never even heard any black person speak like that? You say, well, hold on a minute. So anyway, so to me, I think it's important to address those things and look at what people have culturally contributed. And anyone who respects this music is going to want to know the source. You know, African American music comes directly out of that experience. And so anyone, whatever color they are, is going to want to respect where that comes from. And those are the people that I cater to. I couldn't care less about people that, you know, want to pretend that the first rock band was, you know, Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd, who happens to be named after two blues singers. And so to me, I think it's important that people feel entitled to sample from all of the world's cultures, but be honest about what they've taken from where. I'm not into plagiarism. You know, if I'm going to sample some European classical music, no biggie, I'll give credit to where that comes from. If I'm going to sample some traditional Indian music, you know, or some sitar or some tabla or whatever else, there's no problem. I don't feel the need to pretend that that music is mine. It's not, tablas are not Jamaican. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, tablas are not Scottish. And that's not a problem. So for me, it's just about, it's about being respectful. I'm not into this, we're all the same, why can't we all just get along? No, we're not the same, and that's fine. You know, whoever designed this universe or whatever entity created this universe created different groups of people that produce different types of cultures, and that's absolutely A-OK, that's cool.
Yeah, and I feel like people just don't want to accept that. They want to be like, we're all together, but it's like, you know, Animal Farm, there's going to be someone that's...
Well, we're all together as long as I've got all the power.
Right.
You know, that's when people say, oh, we're all the same. It's easy to say that from a position of power, when you own all the resources, when you control the world, when you're seen as the norm. It's easy to wash over and say, yeah, but we're all the same. But if my life experiences have been different to yours, if you don't have anyone in your family that's been killed by the police, if you haven't grown up being searched by the police every other day, doesn't matter that you're a straight A student, teachers will assume you're stupid. If that's not been your life experience, to tell me that we're the same is a little bit insulting. We've had different experiences. I didn't learn to rap watching MTV. I learned to rap going to Jamaican sound systems my whole life growing up. This is not a culture I bought watching American rappers. This is a culture I was part of. My family, my dad, my stepdad, every single one of my uncles used to chat sound systems. So this is not some foreign thing that I imported and learned from America. If you understand the way hip hop evolved, you know that Jamaican sound systems came here, they went to America, and they were a big part of hip hop's creation. Of course, today everyone tries to tell you hip hop's just American, and if you don't rap in an American accent, you're not even a rapper. Damian Marley, one of the best rappers in the whole world, doesn't get included in discussions of great rappers just because he's got a Jamaican accent. It's totally neo-colonialism. If you don't have an American accent, but you rhythmically rhyme over the beat of a drum, you're not a rapper, you're something else. Which, when you look at the founding fathers of hip hop, Africa Bambaataa, Cool, DJ Herc, Grandmaster Flash, and so many others, KRS-One, that were Caribbean immigrants into America, it becomes a little bit absurd. That's not to take anything away from the influence that New York particularly has had on the evolution of the art of MCing, but let's be real, people didn't start. I say it all the time, and people need to understand, Africans did not begin rhyming over the beat of a drum in New York in 1975. I know I said some of this in the last interview as well, but it is what it is.